Remember when dinner meant gathering around the table without phones, just conversation and comfort food? The 1970s kitchen was a magical place where casseroles ruled and every meal seemed to bring families together. Today we're exploring 25 forgotten dinners from that groovy decade that deserve a comeback. Let's start with meatloaf with mashed potatoes. This wasn't just dinner, it was the cornerstone of American family meals throughout the 1970s. Every mom had her secret recipe, whether it was adding Lipton onion soup mix, crushed saltines, or a stripe of ketchup baked on top that caramelized into sweet perfection. The meatloaf itself was a masterpiece of economy and flavor. Ground beef stretched with breadcrumbs, bound with eggs, and seasoned just right. Beside it, those mashed potatoes weren't whipped with a fancy mixer, but hand-mashed with a worn wooden masher, leaving just enough lumps to remind you they were real. The whole plate cost about $3 to make in 1975, roughly $15 today, but fed a family of 6 with leftovers for sandwiches the next day. Kids would make volcanoes in their potato mountains, filling the crater with gravy or melted butter. That's right, we played with our food and nobody minded, because dinner lasted an hour, not 10 minutes. Tuna casserole with mushroom soup and peas. The ultimate convenience food before convenience food became a dirty word. This dish epitomized everything brilliant about 1970s cooking. It was quick, economical, and somehow transformed pantry staples into something special. A can of tuna cost 39 cents in 1973, cream of mushroom soup was 25 cents, and frozen peas ran about 35 cents. Mix it all with egg noodles, topped with crushed potato chips or French fried onions, and you had dinner for 4 for under $2. The Campbell's Soup Company practically built an empire on this recipe, printing it on every can and in countless magazine ads. Mothers loved it because they could assemble it during afternoon soap operas and have it bubbling in the oven by the time Dad walked through the door. The crispy top layer contrasted perfectly with the creamy interior, and those bright green peas added just enough color to make it feel wholesome. Every church cookbook had at least 3 variations, each family swearing theirs was the best: chicken and rice bake with cream of chicken soup. Before rotisserie chickens appeared in every grocery store, this was how working mothers fed their families without spending hours in the kitchen. The beauty lay in its simplicity: raw chicken pieces arranged over uncooked rice, a can of cream of chicken soup mixed with milk poured over everything, then into the oven for an hour. The rice absorbed all those chicken juices and soup flavors, turning into something between risotto and comfort. A whole cut-up fryer cost $1.29 in 1974, and with a bag of rice and soup, you'd spend maybe $2.50 total. The Pyrex dish it baked in became a family heirloom, that same 9x13 pan showing up at every potluck and funeral dinner for decades. Some families added a packet of onion soup mix on top for extra flavor, others threw in frozen mixed vegetables. The smell that filled the house during that hour of baking, that combination of roasting chicken and creamy soup, could call kids in from 3 blocks away. Beef stroganoff over egg noodles. This was the dish that made every suburban home smell like a fancy restaurant. Real beef stroganoff in the 1970s meant strips of sirloin or round steak, not ground beef, seared in a skillet until brown, then braised with onions and mushrooms in a rich sour cream sauce. At $2.99 a pound for decent steak in 1976, it was the splurge meal, usually reserved for payday Fridays or when company came over. Those wide egg noodles caught every drop of that tangy, creamy sauce, and the whole family would quietly scrape their plates clean, savoring every bite. The recipe came from Russian nobility, but by the 70s, every cookbook from Better Homes and Gardens to your local junior league had their version. Some added a splash of sherry, others used cream of mushroom soup to stretch the sauce, but the best versions took time, browning the meat properly, deglazing with beef broth, stirring in that sour cream at just the right moment so it wouldn't curdle. It was the dinner that proved Mom could cook anything. Porcupine meatballs in tomato sauce. Nobody really knows who first called them porcupine balls, but every kid in the 1970s knew exactly what they looked like. Meatballs studded with rice that stuck out like quills after cooking. The genius was mixing uncooked rice right into the ground beef with onions and seasonings, then simmering everything in tomato sauce until the rice cooked through, absorbing all those meaty flavors. A pound of ground beef ran 69 cents in 1973. A can of tomato sauce was a quarter, and rice was practically free. The whole dish cost less than $2, but looked special. Those white rice quills, making kids giggle every time. Mothers loved it because everything cooked in one pot. No boiling rice separately, no extra dishes. Some families made them with V8 juice for extra vegetable flavor. Others added Worcestershire sauce for depth. The meatballs would simmer for 45 minutes, filling the kitchen with the smell of tomatoes and beef, while the rice swelled and softened, creating perfect bite-sized portions kids would actually eat without complaining. Chicken divan. This was sophistication on a plate in 1975. Fresh broccoli, not frozen, layered with sliced chicken breast, smothered in a cheese sauce made with real cheddar and baked until golden and bubbly. The dish supposedly originated at the Divan Parisienne restaurant in New York, but by the 70s, it had become the go-to recipe for proving you could cook something gourmet. Fresh broccoli was still somewhat exotic in many parts of America, costing about 49 cents a pound when it was available. The sauce, a mixture of mayonnaise, cream of chicken soup, curry powder, and sharp cheddar, sounds strange now, but created magic in the oven. That hint of curry was daring for suburban palates, just exotic enough to feel worldly without being scary. Sliced almonds on top added crunch and another layer of sophistication. The whole casserole would emerge from the oven bronzed and beautiful, the kind of dish that made your dining room feel like a restaurant. Swanson TV dinners. The aluminum tray with its perfectly portioned compartments wasn't just food, it was freedom. In 1975, a Swanson TV dinner cost 88 cents and meant Mom could take a night off, kids could eat in front of Gilligan's Island, and nobody had to wash dishes except for forks. The turkey dinner was the classic. Processed turkey slices, whipped potatoes, mixed vegetables, and that little triangle of apple cobbler that always seemed to migrate into the meat compartment. The ritual was everything. Peeling back the foil carefully so it could be reused as a cover, watching the dinner rotate in the oven window for 25 minutes, burning your tongue on that first bite because you couldn't wait. By 1976, Swanson was selling over 100 million TV dinners annually. The Salisbury steak version with the corn and brownie was arguably better than the turkey, and the fried chicken dinner felt like a special occasion. These weren't just convenience foods. They were tickets to eating in the living room, breaking all the usual dinner table rules. Salisbury steak with brown gravy. Not quite hamburger, not quite meatloaf. Salisbury steak occupied its own special place on 1970s dinner tables. Named after Dr. James Salisbury, who promoted a meat-centered diet in the 1800s, by the 70s it had evolved into an oval-shaped ground beef patty mixed with breadcrumbs and seasonings, pan-fried and swimming in rich brown gravy made from the drippings. A pound of ground beef would make 4 good-sized steaks, and at 79 cents a pound in 1974, it felt like eating fancy without the fancy price. The gravy was the star: beef drippings, flour, beef broth, maybe some onions and mushrooms if Mom was feeling ambitious, all reduced until thick and glossy. Served over mashed potatoes or rice, it was filling, satisfying, and somehow more special than a regular hamburger. The leftovers made incredible sandwiches, slapped between white bread with leftover gravy as a spread. Tuna noodle casserole topped with crushed potato chips. While its cousin with French fried onions got all the glory, the potato chip version was the secret champion of church potlucks and family dinners. The salty crunch of crushed Lay's or Ruffles on top created a textural contrast that the fried onions couldn't match. Kids would fight over the corner pieces where the chips got extra brown and crispy. The base remained the same: egg noodles, canned tuna, cream of mushroom soup, frozen peas. But that potato? Chip topping elevated it to something special. In 1975, a big bag of chips cost 59 cents and would top 2 casseroles. Some adventurous cooks used barbecue or sour cream and onion chips for variety. The dish represented everything practical about 70s cooking: shelf-stable ingredients that could be kept on hand, assembled in minutes, and fed a crowd for under $3. Plus, crushing those chips was the job every kid wanted, smashing them right in the bag with their fists. Sloppy Joes on white hamburger buns. Manwich made it famous, but homemade Sloppy Joes were infinitely better and barely more work. Ground beef browned with onions and green peppers, simmered in a sauce of ketchup, Worcestershire, brown sugar and mustard until thick and messy. The key was cooking it down until it was thick enough to stay on the bun, but still saucy enough to drip down your chin. At 69 cents a pound for ground beef and 39 cents for a package of 8 hamburger buns in 1973, you could feed 6 kids for under $2. Every mom had her secret ingredient. Some added a splash of vinegar for tang, others a spoonful of grape jelly for sweetness. The white hamburger buns were essential. They'd soak up the sauce and practically melt in your mouth. Paper plates were mandatory because nobody wanted to wash dishes covered in that sticky sauce. Kids would compete to see who could take the biggest bite without losing half the filling. Hamburger Helper. When General Mills launched Hamburger Helper in 1971, it revolutionized weeknight dinners across America. For 49 cents, you got everything you needed except the meat, pasta, sauce mix, and the promise of dinner in under 30 minutes. The cheeseburger macaroni was the undisputed king, but beef stroganoff and lasagna had their devoted followers. 1 pound of ground beef, 1 box of Helper, and you had dinner for 4. The helping hand mascot became as recognizable as Tony the Tiger. Moms loved it because it was foolproof, dads loved it because they could make it themselves, and kids loved it because it tasted like childhood. By 1975, 1 in 4 American households was serving it regularly. Some families doctored it up with extra cheese, canned corn, or hot sauce, but honestly, it was perfect, straight from the box. That orange powder that turned into cheese sauce seemed like magic, and the smell of browning beef mixed with those seasonings could summon a family to the table faster than a dinner bell. Pot roast with carrots and onions. Sunday meant pot roast, and pot roast meant the whole house smelled like heaven from noon until dinner at 5. A 3-pound chuck roast cost about $2.50 in 1974, and with carrots, onions, and potatoes, you'd spend maybe $4 total to feed the entire extended family. The ritual started Saturday night, when Mom would take the roast out to come to room temperature. Sunday morning, she'd sear it in the Dutch oven until crusty brown, then add beef broth, maybe some red wine if it was a special Sunday, and let it slow cook all afternoon. The vegetables went in during the last hour, absorbing all those beefy flavors. The meat would literally fall apart when you tried to slice it, and the gravy made from the cooking liquid was liquid gold. Leftover pot roast meant the best sandwiches all week: thick slices on white bread with horseradish and mayo, or chopped up for hash with eggs. Chicken a la king. Served in a patty shell or over toast points, chicken a la king was what you made when you wanted to feel fancy without spending fancy money. Diced chicken in a rich cream sauce with mushrooms, pimientos, and sometimes sherry. It transformed leftover chicken into something that belonged in a country club dining room. The pimientos added color and a subtle sweetness, while the mushrooms gave it an earthy depth. A whole chicken cost $1.19 in 1973, and you could stretch it into this dish that served 6. Those frozen patty shells from Pepperidge Farm were the height of sophistication, flaky, buttery pastry cups that made everything feel special. Some versions added hard-boiled egg yolks for richness, others included green peppers for crunch. The sauce had to be just right, not too thick, not too thin, clinging to the chicken, but still pourable. It was the dish that appeared at every ladies' luncheon, served with a small salad and iced tea. Macaroni and cheese casserole. This wasn't the blue box kind. This was real macaroni and cheese, made with actual cheese that you grated yourself until your knuckles hurt. Sharp cheddar, mild cheddar, sometimes a bit of Velveeta for creaminess, all melted into a white sauce made from scratch with butter, flour, and milk. The macaroni got boiled just shy of done because it would finish cooking in the oven. Everything got mixed together, poured into a buttered casserole dish, topped with breadcrumbs mixed with melted butter, and baked until the top was golden and the edges were crusty. A pound of good cheddar cost about $1.39 in 1975, but it was worth every penny. The corners where the cheese got brown and crispy were fought over at every dinner table. Some families added sliced tomatoes on top, others mixed in hot dogs or ham. But the classic version, just pasta and cheese with that crunchy top, was perfection. Jello salad with canned fruit. It appeared at every potluck, funeral dinner, and holiday table, that wobbly, colorful creation that couldn't decide if it was salad or dessert. Lime Jello with canned pears, strawberry with fruit cocktail, orange with mandarin oranges, and mini marshmallows. The fancier versions had layers, each one carefully set in the refrigerator before adding the next. A box of Jello cost 23 cents in 1974, canned fruit was 45 cents, and you had a dish that served 8 and looked like stained glass when the sun hit it. Some added Cool Whip between layers, others folded in cream cheese for richness. The copper molds, shaped like fish or rings, made them even more special. Kids loved them because they wiggled. Adults loved them because they were light and refreshing after heavy meals. Every church cookbook had at least 20 variations, each one somebody's grandmother's special recipe. Quiche Lorraine. When Real Men Don't Eat Quiche was published in 1982, it was already too late. The 1970s had made quiche a staple of sophisticated home cooking. The classic Lorraine, with its crispy bacon, Swiss cheese, and silky custard in a buttery crust, was the dish that proved you'd graduated from casseroles. Making your own pie crust was a badge of honor, though Pillsbury's refrigerated crusts at 69 cents made it accessible to everyone. Heavy cream at $1.29 a pint in 1976 was the splurge ingredient that made all the difference. The key was blind baking the crust first, using pie weights or dried beans to keep it from puffing up. Then that magical mixture of eggs, cream, and cheese would transform in a 375-degree oven into something custardy and golden. Served with a simple green salad, it was lunch, brunch, or a light dinner that made you feel positively continental. Deviled eggs and ham steak dinner. Before deviled eggs got relegated to appetizer status, they were part of a proper dinner, especially around Easter, when hard-boiled eggs were plentiful. A thick ham steak, scored and glazed with brown sugar and mustard, grilled or broiled until caramelized, served alongside those creamy, paprika-dusted eggs. A ham steak cost about $1.99 in 1975 and would serve 3 or 4 people. The eggs, that perfect mixture of yolks, mayonnaise, yellow mustard, and pickle relish, were piped back into the whites if company was coming, spooned if it was just family. Some added bacon bits, others anchovy paste for umami before anyone knew what umami was. With some scalloped potatoes and green beans, it was Easter dinner without cooking a whole ham, perfect for smaller families. Cabbage rolls in tomato sauce. Every Eastern European grandmother's recipe was slightly different, but they all started the same way, blanching cabbage leaves until pliable, then rolling them around a mixture of ground beef, rice, and onions. The rolls would nestle together in a pot covered with tomato sauce and simmer for hours until the cabbage was silky and the filling was tender. Ground beef at 79 cents a pound and cabbage at 12 cents a pound in 1974 meant you could make a huge pot for under $3. Some added sauerkraut to the pot for tang, others used V8 juice instead of plain tomato sauce. The smell would permeate the entire house, that combination of cabbage and tomato that meant comfort was coming. They were even better the next day, reheated when all the flavors had melded together. Stuffed green peppers. Bell peppers were nature's own serving bowl, and in the 1970s, everyone was filling them. Green peppers cost about 25 cents each in 1975, and filled with a mixture of ground beef, rice, onions, and tomato sauce. They made an economical dinner that looked impressive. The key was parboiling the peppers first so they'd be tender but still hold their shape. Some topped them with cheese for the last few minutes of baking. Others added breadcrumbs for crunch. The filling variations were endless. Some used ground turkey when it became available. Others added corn or black beans. Standing upright in the baking dish like little soldiers, surrounded by tomato sauce that turned into the most flavorful gravy as the peppers released their juices, they were as beautiful as they were delicious. Kids either loved them or picked out all the filling and left the pepper shell behind. Cornish game hens. Nothing said dinner party in 1975 like individual Cornish game hens, one per person, garnished with orange slices and fresh parsley. At $1.50 per bird, they were expensive but impressive, making every guest feel special with their own personal tiny chicken. The trick was butterflying them or cooking them breast side down first to keep the white meat moist while the dark meat cooked through. Stuffed with wild rice or cornbread stuffing, glazed with orange marmalade or apricot preserves, they looked like something from a magazine. The small bones made them challenging to eat gracefully, which is why finger bowls with lemon water sometimes appeared at fancier tables. But oh, that crispy skin and tender meat, flavored with herbs tucked under the skin, butter, thyme, rosemary, made every dinner feel like Thanksgiving. Some hosts went all out, flambeing them with brandy tableside for maximum drama. Swiss steak in tomato gravy. Not Swiss at all, but named for the Swissing technique of pounding tough meat until tender. This was how budget-conscious cooks turned cheap round steak into something special. The meat got pounded with a meat mallet until it surrendered, dredged in seasoned flour, then browned and braised in tomato gravy until fork tender. Round steak cost about $1.29 a pound in 1973, and 1 pound could feed 4 people when pounded thin. The gravy, tomatoes, onions, celery, and bell peppers would cook down into something rich and flavorful. Some versions added Worcestershire or soy sauce for depth. After 2 hours of slow cooking, that tough piece of meat would cut with a fork, and the gravy was perfect over mashed potatoes or rice. It was the dish that proved you didn't need expensive cuts to make something delicious. Chicken tetrazzini. Named after Italian opera star Luisa Tetrazzini, this pasta bake was the ultimate leftover transformation. Spaghetti or linguine tossed with diced chicken, mushrooms, and peas in a sherry-spiked cream sauce, topped with parmesan and breadcrumbs, then baked until golden and bubbling. Turkey worked just as well, making it the go-to post-Thanksgiving dish. The sauce started with a roux, building into something rich with chicken stock and cream, maybe a splash of sherry if you were feeling fancy. At its peak in the mid-70s, every junior league cookbook had at least 2 versions. The key was not overcooking the pasta, since it would continue cooking in the oven. Some added almonds for crunch, others pimientos for color. That moment when you'd break through the crispy top layer to reveal the creamy pasta beneath was pure satisfaction, beef Wellington. This was the showstopper, the dish you'd attempt maybe once a year when you really needed to impress. Beef tenderloin at $4.99 a pound in 1976 was an investment, but wrapped in pâté, mushroom duxelle, and puff pastry, it was pure theater. The complexity was part of the appeal, searing the beef, cooling it, spreading it, with pâté, or liverwurst if you couldn't find pâté, wrapping it in crepes to keep the pastry from getting soggy, then the final puff pastry wrapping. The terror of cutting into it, hoping the beef was perfectly pink and the pastry was golden and flaky, not soggy on the bottom. When it worked, it was magnificent. When it didn't, well, it still tasted good, even if it looked like a mess. Julia Child made it look possible on TV, and thousands of home cooks tried with varying degrees of success. Cheese fondue with bread cubes. The fondue pot was the must-have wedding gift of the 1970s, and cheese fondue was the reason why. Swiss and Gruyere cheeses melted with white wine and kirsch, kept warm over a can of sterno while everyone gathered around with long forks, spearing bread cubes and trying not to lose them in the pot. The rule was if you dropped your bread, you had to kiss someone or buy the next round of drinks. Good Swiss cheese cost about $3.50 a pound in 1975, making this an expensive dinner, but the experience was worth it. The key was keeping the temperature just right, too hot, and the cheese would separate, too cool, and it would congeal. Some added beer instead of wine, others threw in sharp cheddar for a more American taste. The bread had to be crusty enough to stay on the fork, but soft enough inside to soak up that molten cheese. Lasagna layered with ricotta and mozzarella. Before lasagna became a freezer aisle staple, making it from scratch was a weekend project that filled the house with anticipation. The sauce would simmer all day Saturday, ground beef, Italian sausage, tomatoes, herbs, while the ricotta mixture got assembled with eggs and parmesan. Those lasagna noodles, which had to be boiled and laid out on towels to dry, were always a few short of what you needed. Layer by layer, it came together in a deep pan. Sauce, noodles, ricotta, mozzarella, repeat, until it towered above the rim. A pound of ricotta cost 89 cents in 1974. Mozzarella was $1.29. And with the meat and sauce, you'd spend maybe $6 to make something that fed 10 people. The edges where the cheese got brown and crispy were the prize, fought over at every family dinner. And the leftovers, if there were any, were somehow even better the next day. Thanks for joining us on this trip down memory lane. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe.